Hi guys, it's that time again. Which is better? And it will be a Fear Factory special. So if you're into death metal with industrial overtones, then this is definitely for you. And the two albums we're going to be looking at are Soul of a New Machine and Demanufacture. Let's get into this. So looking at Soul of a New Machine, it's no surprise that I like it. Yeah, this might happen to be a death metal album, but the obvious new metal influences that will become more and more prominent with Fear Factory's later albums are pretty clear here. Though I grudgingly admit that they do this album more good than bad. There's an immense charm to the material found on this album because it turns this album into a masterpiece. The album itself is awkward, clumsy, and perhaps a bit compromised in its weirdness, but it still manages to hold up well even against more obvious death metal masterpieces of the time and even after its release. The use of clean vocals, tendency to groove, definitely hint towards a more mainstream sound. Of course, that will be further materialized on later releases. You definitely heard this right. This album is a very unique death metal album because it has the new metal elements, but there's also the obvious industrial elements that characterize the band's sound as well. But what's more arguably even more unique is that there's actually signs of grindcore influence found on here as well. Vocalist Burton C. Bell does a nice job at imitating Napalm Death's vocals with his growls, and some tracks definitely use some of the foundations that they laid a few years prior. I have to say, the weird combination of both brutality and melody, including the clean vocals, actually works pretty fantastic. Sure, this album is unintentionally somewhat pretentious and awkward as a result, but again, it's the charm that keeps the majority of the album quite enjoyable. It's wholly confused at times. It doesn't really know whether it should go flat out brutal or just treat us with a clean vocal passage, but most of the time the result is great no matter what. I praise the album for the material. It's a whopping 17 tracks covering 55 minutes to stop emitting sound, but I do find that not a single second of it actively bores me. The industrial elements used in this album definitely set it apart from more traditional death metal records. But Fear Factory looked at death metal and basically thought how they could expand the genre. I'm pretty sure that they did a fine job at achieving that. Yes, there are clean vocals, and sometimes clean vocals do feature in death metal. You just have to look closely. And it's definitely a big risk to take, but Burton is definitely a good singer. There are numerous clean vocal breaks on this album, but apart from a few, they're all a joy to hear on the album that successfully mixes so many genres together into one glorious piece of experimental brilliance. Technically, this album gets the job done. Fear Factory made full advantage of their supreme knowledge of how to make simple work by creating what is hands down one of the catchiest death metal albums you'll ever hear. It's obvious that this didn't need starting technicality or complexity to sound good, and it isn't just end-to-end walls of riffs. Now, the fact that the riffs are pretty catchy is a bonus, but I feel the complete package of the band mashing as much as they could into basically every song here is largely responsible for what makes the album enjoyable. So this album is full of electronic effects, sound samples, and unusual stuff for a death metal release that reveals the album's insanely interesting experimental nature. This is a work of immense depth. Songs are somewhat clumsy, but it's obvious that a lot of thought and care went into making each song awesome in its own right. The instrumentation is mixed, and typical early 90s guitar doesn't have much to prove in terms of technicality, but the catchiness we get makes up for it, alongside the generally great bass sound and the impressive drum performance. It just works. This is a really great album. While definitely on the long side, it just proves to be one of the most recognizable and memorable albums of the 90s. I recommend everybody to give this album a listen. It's well-rounded and doesn't lack anything it shouldn't lack. Like I said, it's clumsy, awkward, and even not self-aware, but it doesn't hold the album back necessarily. This is one of the most diverse death metal albums you will ever hear, successfully combining melody with brutality, and it sounds awesome. This is experimentation done right. So switching gears, we're going to look at Demanufacture. Now, this band was definitely onto something with their previous album, Solo of a New Machine. Though some may consider it not to be an all-out classic, it was definitely an exceptional album and arguably ushered in the alternative metal era with its fusion of different metal styles. When Fear Factory returned a few years later with this album, the band's groundbreaking style of industrial and death metal informed metal came to fruition, and this time many folks did take note, resulting in one of the most successful metal releases of the 90s, commercially as well as artistically. On the surface, it seems almost like Demanufacture is like a remastered edition of Soul of a New Machine. When it comes to production, Fear Factory enlisted the help of Earache Records legend Colin Richardson, and again they fused together a number of elements characteristic various metal subgenres. For example, MERCYFUL unleashes a ferocious death growl, yet he can switch over to a more Rob Halford-like vocal style when he wants to, soaring with melodic vocals for contrast. Guitarist Dino Cazares straddles the fence between industrial and death metal, as he plays machine-like riffs that chug away in lockstep with the likewise machine drummer Raymond Herrera. Herrera yet breaks away at any given moment and takes off a frenzied, very human direction. The Mad Machine sound, real people playing real instruments live, though in an industrial, machine-like fashion, is the essence of Fear Factory. While the previous album may have been a blueprint for this approach, Demanufacture takes the approach one step further. Same band, same idea, same production, same sound, better songs, better performances, better album, and better reception. Perhaps the biggest improvement made here is the choice to write longer, more progressive songs, and shorten the song list from 11 compared to 17. This makes for a much more engrossing listen, and one that resonates in the end. This album may come across generic by today's standards, but in the wake of a myriad of alternative metal bands that took cues from it, make no mistake, it was one of the most exciting metal releases of the time, and it definitely remains a landmark. Even if Fear Factory continue to release albums like this later on. So there you have it, guys. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought was the better album. Other than that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.